The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., February 12, 2025. I hereby appoint the Honorable Marionette Miller Meeks to act as Speaker Pro Tempore on this day. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 3, 2025, the chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The chair will alternate recognition between the parties with time equally allocated between the parties and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Kennedy, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Gabriele Mucciarelli, who we lost at the age of 90 earlier this month. Gabe was an exceptional man whose life was a testament to hard work, loyalty, and the power of the American dream. In 1952, at the age of 17, Gabe left all that he had in Italy for Canada in search of a better life. There, he worked in a collision shop and realized his natural talent for auto repair. After marrying the love of his life, his late wife, Maria, in 1961, they moved to Buffalo, where they built a beautiful family and continued to work hard. 3 years later, his hard work paid off, and he opened up the first Gabe's Collision on East Delavan in Buffalo. Gabe's attention to detail and quality service made the business a success, and it quickly expanded to Genesee Street. He was well respected in the industry and known around town as an honest man with impeccable talent who could make any car look as good as new. Just last year, Gabe's Collision, which has grown from one small shop in Buffalo to 3 locations across Western New York, celebrated 60 years in business. Gabe lived his life no differently than he did his job. Treating those around him with fairness and integrity, he was always there to help and provided his loved ones with selfless, unwavering support. He is survived by his children, Joanna and Jeff, and grandchildren, Christina Ippolito and Gioia Mucciarelli, as well as many nieces, nephews, and devoted friends. Gabe's son, Jeff, has followed in his father's footsteps, not only in business, but in his commitment to honesty and integrity. For 40 years, Jeff was lucky enough to work alongside his father as they built Gabe's dream of a small collision shop into a large operation with that same commitment to quality and great work. Gabe loved his family, his work, his community, and our country deeply. As we mourn his loss, let us take comfort in knowing how loved he was and his incredible impact on countless lives. May Gabriele Mucciarelli rest in peace. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of James Francis Doherty, a remarkable public servant and family man whose perseverance and loyalty will continue to serve as an example for all in those that are willing and able to help make changes to this world. A graduate of Bishop Timon St. Jude High School and Buffalo State University, Jimmy went into the world wanting to make a difference, and that he did. Upon graduation, he worked as a special education teacher at South Park High School until he ran for office. Jimmy was the youngest elected at-large councilman in the Buffalo Common Council. During his tenure, he was a fierce advocate for the people he represented, especially the most vulnerable in our community, including women, people of color, and anyone who was disenfranchised. He always kept a picture of his 2 beloved daughters, Bridget and Leah, behind his desk. Whenever someone came in with a request, he would point to the photo and say, "I do everything for those 2, so make sure whatever you're asking of me, I can be proud to share with them." He would go on to be a mentor and a friend to many and remained active in city policymaking, inspiring generations of civic-minded Buffalonians. After retiring from politics, Jimmy led a selfless career in student transportation, holding executive roles at National School Bus, Laidlaw Education Service, and later, First Student. Each fall, Western New Yorkers could rely on Jimmy to help them usher in a safe return to school. As president of the Wanaka Country Club, Jimmy was an avid golfer and passionate sports fan. When he wasn't helping others, he could be found on the green with his favorite golf partner and best friend, his brother Jerry. Jimmy is survived by his beloved wife, Marleya, his devoted children, Bridget Doherty and Leah Roberts, his loving grandchildren, Haley and Sophia Jones, and Anna and Harrison Roberts, as well as countless other nieces, nephews, family members, and friends. Jimmy's loyalty to his family and devotion to his city made him a model leader, one whom all Buffalonians and Western New Yorkers can look up to with pride and admiration. He will certainly be missed. May Jimmy Doherty rest in peace. I yield back.
Recognizes a gentlewoman from Iowa, Ms. Miller Meeks, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I feel compelled to remark on the outrage of my colleagues and others over the special government employee status granted to Elon Musk by the executive branch. We are hearing a lot of, oh, he's unelected, he's unaccountable. Let me remind my colleagues and those voices that the vast majority of government employees who review and authorize grants, disperse billions of dollars, issue rules and laws, or even handle our nation's pandemic response, like Dr. Anthony Fauci, are unelectable and unaccountable to the voters. How about the IRS bureaucrat Lois Lerner? And how can we forget Acorn? None of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were calling for accountability or investigations when Dr. Fauci was forcing his mandate on 300 million Americans. None of them were expressing outrage when unelected bureaucrats were forcing 6-year-olds to wear masks or closing down schools or forcing Head Start students to continue to wear masks long after the rest of America had stopped wearing them, and closing down churches and small businesses across the country. Who can forget government employee who leaked the pending Dobbs court decision? And no conservative has forgotten Lois Lerner of the IRS denying 501c status to those volunteer citizens wanting to protest the Obama administration. These government employees yield tremendous power with no oversight, often making decisions behind closed doors that affect millions of Americans. Elon Musk was hired by the President of the United States, or brought on, to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. That's it. Every move being made by him and DOJ is being made in the public eye as an audit, not in the shadows. So let's be clear, because this really isn't about accountability. It's about the fear of a system that might be held accountable and expose corruption. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield.
The gentlelady yields. The chair recognizes the member from Delaware, Representative McBride, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor and congratulate the Dover Police Department on 100 years of service to the capital of Delaware. Beginning in 1925 with a mere 2-room office in the basement of City Hall, over the past 100 years, the department has grown to more than 100 officers, as well as professional support staff, divided over 3 divisions and 9 functional units. Led by their 15th chief, Thomas A. Johnson, Jr., these dedicated public servants put their lives on the line every day to protect public safety and support victims of crime in Delaware's second-largest city. In all they do, Dover police are ingrained in the community, working alongside our educators, health professionals, nonprofits, and business partners, as well as regional, state, and federal law enforcement partners. Their commitment to community policing and their behavioral health unit reinforce their compassionate and holistic approach to public safety. On the centennial of the Dover Police Department, I thank the heroes who have donned the badge with honor, courage, and unwavering commitment to Dover. A grateful state wishes the Dover Police Department a happy centennial. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the commitment of a dedicated community leader, Paul Calistro, to the state of Delaware. A former mayor of Newport, Delaware, Paul has been the executive director of West End Neighborhood House in Wilmington since 1991, working tirelessly to provide direct programs, services, support, and advocacy to Delawareans, their families, and our broader community. For more than 140 years, West End Neighborhood House has empowered generations of Delawareans to become and remain self-sufficient. Under Paul's leadership, West End has grown their impact, helping over 10,000 Delawareans each year. They provide meals, place people in long-term employment, secure stable housing, and teach critical skills to community members. While the backbone of that work is the dedicated team of staff and volunteers at West End, at the heart of that work is the big heart of Paul Calistro. When being honored several years ago, Paul said, quote, "Somebody's got to stand up and be an advocate for people who can't speak. Whether they're a youth aging out of foster care or a single mom trying to get a good paying job, Paul is an advocate for those too often left behind." Ever the selfless leader, as Paul celebrates his birthday this week, instead of asking for anything himself, he has asked people to support youth in foster care. While Paul celebrates his birthday by supporting others, a grateful state celebrates Paul for his ongoing commitment to making Delaware a place that more fully lives up to our values as a state of neighbors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
The representative yields. The representative from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, in this ongoing conversation about government overreach and last-minute regulations that have just been so damaging, I'd like to bring up how that has affected water supply for California and for the West, and for everybody that enjoys American-grown food. It affects you, because what we've seen happen is that there's an ongoing onslaught really, to remove dams, especially in the western states and in my own district in Northern California. Well, what are the results of that? In order to somehow believe that they're seeking fish passage and greater fish populations, for example, with this government overreach, with these false pronouncement based on really faulty, fake data, what do we get? On the Klamath River, we got dead fish, thousands of them, and other wildlife after the removal of the dams that have happened. The silt load that was behind that dam that we warned them about has been flowing down the river of the Klamath ever since. Massive fish kills, other wildlife getting caught in that silt. Again, we warned them about that. And so now they're pronouncing, oh, it's nirvana, it's heaven, because the water is flowing through there, and we've lost that hydroelectric power that the dams used to generate. And so it's now becoming someone else's problem farther down the stream with the silt. If it doesn't wash out within, say, 3 years, that's an entire salmon life cycle. Will actually wipe out the population of water that is sourced from what is actually a warm lake and is not ideal to salmon. So we see it time and again. The government overreach is affecting the smart use of water in California. Right now they're dumping water out of Shasta Dam and Oroville Dam in Northern California. The water coming out of Shasta is actually flooding a part of the town of Redding and then areas of Glenn County farther down the line along the Sacramento River, because there's so much water going out. Yet there's still ample storage space behind Shasta, 600,000, maybe 700,000 acre feet behind that. But the problem is they don't use up-to-date weather forecasting in order to determine, should we be dumping water, or could we maybe keep some of it a little longer, because we're not going to get that much rain between now and the target date of April 1, when they stop the so-called conservation of space for flood control. We all get it. Flood control needs to be provided for behind these dams. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, that's their charge. But it seems like their hair trigger is to dump water instead of also trying to conserve it. This is really based not just on the ideal of flood control, but also fish passage and fish water, because what we're seeing down in the Delta, they're limited in the Bay Delta to being able to only move about 6,000 cubic feet per second via the lift pumps into San Luis Reservoir and other places where they could be stashing this water. We have a capacity of doing 15,000 cubic feet per second, which over 24 hours means 30,000 acre feet of saved water, that we're not going to have that opportunity soon once this rainy season's over with. Yet we have a number somewhere around 180 to 200,000 cubic feet per second flowing out through the Delta that isn't being trapped, that isn't being captured. Do you think we would miss 9,000 more cubic feet per second out of the Delta going into water storage for California? than what is happening now, out of 180,000 to 200,000. When you got 60,000 flowing out of Shasta Dam, flooding downstream areas, you got huge amounts coming out of Oroville and other projects around the state. We're not capturing the water. We're doing harm to ourselves. No wonder the people of Southern California are actually getting really angry about what's happening as their eyes are being opened to how our state's being run and what's being done by government overreach, by these last-minute regulations, these last-minute things that come in that declare yet another national monument, which means, in my district, nearly 250,000 acres that are now off limits towards management for fire on the forested lands or other public uses. The ideal for Forest Service land used to be land, you see the signs, land of many uses. Well, now it just boils down to land of only being cut off from the people and from wise management of our forests. So if you enjoy million-acre fires, that's going to continue to be the prescription because of last-minute, 11th-hour pronouncements such as these national monuments that the Biden administration did on the way out the door. And so we have the power in Congress, under what's called the Congressional Review Act, to review regulations that are just made by the stroke of a pen. The legislative process is supposed to have all of us here in the light of day, on TV, in committee, wherever the people can watch us do what we do, instead of so much power being invested in the executive, such as under the Antiquities Act, which is part of where part of these abuses come from. All at the last minute, all at the stroke of a pen. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, for 5 minutes.
Any day now, President Trump is gearing up to shut down the Department of Education. This is the latest power grab, an assault on our kids, an assault on our teachers, an assault on our families in our district that rely on public education. The Department of Education is a lifeline for many low-income residents and students. When the president says he wants to abolish it, he is coming after communities like Detroit, Southfield, Dearborn, and Livonia. The department's Title I funding ensures all children, regardless which zip code they were born in, to access public education, quality education. So here we go, the president is attacking public school students. More than half of our nation's public schools educate low income, but also students with special needs. They're going after, again, the different programs that help children living with autism. Children, again, having learning disabilities, needing that special care. I know that it's the public education system that takes them in and takes care of them and ensures that they have access to quality education. We also know that states across the country want to whitewash Black history. They're already going after it, as if Black history is not American history. We also know they want to erase the existence of LGBTQI+ students and discriminate against our children. I know without the Department of Education, no one will be left to ensure civil rights laws are enforced in our schools. We know that community college students in my district alone, I know, will particularly suffer because 50% of Henry Ford College in my district receives Pell Grants that is going and administrated through the Department of Education. I know folks are like, it's never going to happen. It already has started. To my colleagues, if you support abolishing the Department of Education, then publicly do it. Vote on it on this House floor. Don't allow your little minion billionaire do it. If you want to do it, then your residents, the American people, deserve to see how you will vote. Will you leave our children behind or not? So it is important, critically important, that we do this in a transparent way, because I know my residents want me on record voting against abolishing public education. Mr. Speaker, here we go. Elon Musk, the richest man in the planet, and Russ Vought, the guy who wrote Project 2025, wants to shut down the 911 agency for fraud and consumer protection, where many of us call the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is where my residents call for mortgage fraud, to fight against different scams that they fall victim to because we haven't done a good job preventing folks from out of the country and others targeting our seniors and so many others. Financial predators like Wall Street and CEOs despise the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I wonder why. That's because it's the only agency whose sole mission, y'all, is to protect working people from getting ripped off. I still remember the success we had in going after loan servicers for student loans, getting back millions of dollars back to people who were directly impacted by those scams. Shutting down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau lets financial predators run wild, and working class families will pay the price. Since it was created, we know that it forced big banks and powerful corporations to give $21 billion back to our families that were cheated. But here we go. President Trump's minion, Elon Musk, wants to steal hard-earned money from working class to reward their billionaire donors and CEOs, to protect them, not us. So I know that the CFPB had huge impact on the lives of my residents for doing things like capping credit card late fees, holding companies who break the law accountable, targeting junk fees, eliminating $49 billion in medical debt from people's credit report. Think about that. No one plans to get sick, y'all. We have sick care in our country, not health care. No one should have to file bankruptcy because they got sick and they couldn't afford to take care of themselves. But they helped also protect 15 million Americans that have medical debt on their credit report. It was supposed to be implemented in March to remove credit, literally, from people's credit report, medical debt. It doesn't belong there. I know that doesn't matter to these billionaires, but it makes a world of difference for our families who are just trying to make ends meet. They want to make sure that our government is about people, that we have their back. And I know this agency, the 911 call they make to this agency to protect them has made a difference, but they want to eliminate that. Again, if you want to get rid of this agency, do it publicly. Vote on it. I have no idea why you're handing your duties and responsibilities in the oath of this office to hand it over to a billionaire that never took the oath. Thank you, and I yield.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Ciscomani, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in honor of my good friend, J.D. Rottweiler, for a remarkable 15 years of service as Cochise president, and to wish him the best on his well-deserved retirement. Since his tenure began, J.D. has been a transformative leader known for his hyper-local initiatives and incredible work uplifting the college and its students. Under his leadership, Cochise College expanded access to education by adding student housing at the Sierra Vista campus and launching the First Responders Academy to train and equip students with the tools necessary to keep all their communities safe. He oversaw the remodeling and revitalization of Sierra Vista's former hospital into an innovative downtown center that houses nursing, cybersecurity, culinary, and lifelong learning programs. Moreover, he played a pivotal role in ensuring his students had access to high-speed fiber internet at the Douglas campus by enhancing connectivity and accessibility for students and the staff. As a proud product of community college myself, I know firsthand the crucial role these programs play in the lives of our students. JD, my friend, you have truly left a lasting legacy not only for our students, but for our entire community. Enjoy your well-deserved retirement. You've accomplished a lot, and I look forward to seeing you around the district soon. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor a patriot of the highest order, Vietnam War veteran Bruce Bigelow. Mr. Bigelow is a true hero who exemplifies the highest ideals of service and sacrifice. And it was my profound honor to present him with the Purple Heart Medal for his heroic service when I visited him in Sierra Vista last fall. The Purple Heart is a distinguished award given to those who have been wounded or killed in action while serving our nation. And it symbolizes the immense sacrifices they made to preserve our freedoms and way of life. Mr. Bigelow, who served in the United States Marine Corps, and served 2 tours in Vietnam from 1966 to 1971. In the course of his service, Mr. Bigelow was awarded numerous recognitions and honors, including the National Defense Service Medal, Good Conduct Medal, Rifle Marksman Badge, Vietnam Service Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, and certainly not least of these, the Purple Heart. His courage is a testament to the bravery and resilience of those who have answered duty's call to wear the uniform as a member of our armed forces. I had the privilege of pinning this Purple Heart on him and thank him for his service to our nation in front of his family and his friends. He told me he was honored, but truth be told, the honor was all mine. On behalf of a grateful community and nation, I say again, thank you, Mr. Bigelow, for your courage, sacrifice, and enduring commitment to service. Thank you, and I yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark, for 5 minutes.
I've been listening to my Republican colleagues, waiting for the moment when they are going to fight for the American people, the constituents that they have that are not Elon Musk. So far, the silence is deafening. If they're not cheering it on, they are standing aside silently as cancer research labs are shut down, as the Veterans Administration is targeted, as the health care for millions of Americans is threatened, and eggs, oh, those eggs, have hit an all-time high of $8 a dozen. This silence is a betrayal of all Americans, of their very voters. So let's just take a closer look at one example. Now they are letting Elon Musk dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Most people haven't heard of the CFPB, but Americans know the corporate greed that they have gone after on their behalf for more than a decade. The predatory loan sharks, the abusive debt collectors. When Republicans are silent, you are siding with the scam artists. Let me give you one example. Before the CFPB stepped in, a Marine stationed in Texas who needs a loan to repair his truck would be charged the average payday interest rate in Texas. Do you know what that is? That is 664%. So if he took out a $2,000 loan, he would pay $1,100 in interest. But when the CFPB enforced the law, and I do hope my Republicans remember the days when they supported the rule of law, when the CFPB enforces the law that limits interest rates for U.S. service members, they reduce that interest on that loan to $60. Altogether, the CFPB put $360 million back into the pockets of our service members and veterans. That's what they do. They save Americans money. They went after bogus overdraft fees. That's $5 billion back into the pockets of working families every year. Over $200 per family. They banned outrageous late fees on credit cards. That's $10 billion every year going back to consumers. What is the problem with this agency? Apparently, Republicans in Congress would rather have that money go into the pockets of CEOs, spend that money cutting billionaires' taxes instead of fighting fraud and corporate abuse. The American people did not vote for more scams, for more corporate greed. They didn't vote to have our service members go into more debt. They voted for people to fight for them, for lower costs, for their part in the American dream. So let's wake up, GOP. Stand up for the American people. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today as we celebrate Black History Month and honor the incredible achievements of Kenny McMorris, a visionary leader, a champion for the community's well-being, and a constituent in our 2nd District of our great state, Nebraska. Mr. McMorris is a veteran healthcare executive, innovator, influencer, and strategist with an extensive leadership, policy, community, and public health background. His wife, Michaela, is the founder and owner of Moxie 16. They are the proud parents of 2 children, Kenny Jr. and McKinley. As the CEO of Charles Drew Health Center, Kenny oversees the health center's business, community, and primary care operations. The center has a $24 million operating budget, over 200 employees, 13,000 patients, and nearly 40,000 outpatient service visits annually. Under his leadership, Charles Drew Health Center has expanded its service locations from 4 to 16, including primary medical, dental, pharmacy, and behavioral health services. It emphasizes the disenfranchised and addresses the social drivers of health. Over the course of his decade-long career, Kenny has contributed transforming healthcare delivery and equity through his innovative strategies and disciplined commitment to serving disenfranchised communities. As a North Omaha native, Kenny attended the University of Nebraska at Omaha, earning a bachelor's degree in business administration and management, and in 2004 he earned an MPA in public management and healthcare administration. After his education, he brought his expertise to the Omaha community as the first executive director of the 100 Black Men of Omaha and director of marketing and development for the Urban League of Nebraska. Kenny is shown to be active in both the professional and larger communities. In his advocating career, Kenny is board certified in healthcare management and a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives and Community Health Centers Executives Fellow. He holds memberships with the National Medical Association, the National Association of Health Services Executives, the American Public Health Association, and Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. These demonstrations showcases engagement in advancing professional standards, networking, and mentoring. Furthermore, Kenny McMorris also serves on the boards of directors of the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, the Nebraska Methodist College, Radius, the Health Center Association of Nebraska, Heartland Community Health Network, the Bridge Family Resource Connector Network, and the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services Medicaid Advisory Committee. It's crystal clear that Kenny is not just a professional of the highest caliber, but a great community leader who exemplifies public service, vision, unwavering commitment, and on making a difference in our communities. Kenny's accomplishments include the University of Nebraska at Omaha Young Alumni Achievement Award, the University of Nebraska at Omaha College of Public Affairs and Community Service Annual Award of Excellence, and the National Association of Community Health Centers, the Betsy K. Cook Grassroots MVP Award, also the Urban League of Nebraska African American Leadership Award, the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Midwestern Regional Award for Excellence in Health and Wellness, and University of Nebraska Medical Center Nebraska Medicine Servant Leadership Award. He's done it all. The accolades Kenny received reflect his excellence through investing in public health, uplifting community development, and demonstrating to inspire innovative change in every role he has played, while being a great husband and a father, which I also admire. Through dedication, perseverance, and tackling healthcare inequalities, Kenny has encompassed a meaningful vision for disenfranchised populations. His role has laid a foundation for healthier, more equitable communities. Kenny McMorris's contributions in Omaha exemplify nothing short of the values of Black History Month, which celebrates resilience, leadership, and commitment to advancing public health and opportunity for all. Omaha is a better place because of Kenny McMorris. His impact has been positively felt by thousands upon thousands. I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair now recognizes a gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Auchincloss, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to the illegal and unwise policy recently announced by the National Institutes of Health to limit their indirect cost recapture rate to 15%. To start with, as we start with most Trump administration maneuvers these last 3 weeks, it's illegal. Now, I know that my Republican colleagues don't think that it's possible for the president to answer to the rule of law, but it is critical, particularly with the biomedical enterprise that makes long-term, expensive investments, to have confidence that when Congress or the president make a commitment, that they stand by it over the course of years and even across decades. And undermining the rule of law undermines our ability to do the kinds of long-term transformational science that changes lives. In 2017, when the Trump administration first attempted to lower the indirect cost recapture rate to 10%, the Appropriations Committee, by an overwhelming bipartisan vote, rejected it and froze the IDC at its current levels. That has been reauthorized every single year from 2017 through 2024. So I would ask my Republican colleagues, you voted for this. They are breaking that law that you voted for. What are you going to do about it? Now, the NIH might say that, oh, we're referring to a different section of the code whereby we can, for a subset of grants with documentation, reduce the IDC. That is not the NIH policy, though. The NIH did not do a subset of grants. They did it for every single grant and with zero documentation. So wake up, Republicans. They're breaking your law. Now, the NIH might claim that what we're doing here is actually not cuts to the NIH, because the same $35 billion are going to go out to science, and now it's just going to be more of those direct experiments, the people, the reagents, the travel, and less of that expensive overhead. And while it is true that the same amount of dollars could go out the door, in reality, these institutions, whether universities or hospitals, are going to be decreasingly able to afford to accept them. Of any given experiment, the overhead associated with that experiment is well more than 15%. Research facilities, energy bills, support personnel, data and technology, these things are expensive. We're not in the era of, beakers in somebody's backyard doing chemical experiments. We're in an era of cutting-edge genetic engineering, and the equipment costs money. Fewer institutions and investigators are going to be able to accept these grants. And what we are ultimately going to do is privatize research infrastructure. And so we're going to get less of it. It's just as though the Department of Transportation told businesses to build their own bridges and sidewalks. We just wouldn't get as many of them. The impact in Massachusetts is going to be profound. It's a $2 billion attack on the research infrastructure that undergirds our eds and meds enterprise. An enterprise that creates billions of dollars in economic activity, that supports hundreds of thousands of well-paying jobs. Each of those jobs in biopharma, for example, can create 5 other jobs, a profound economic multiplier. And the work that we do in Massachusetts changes lives. Progress on Alzheimer's, under which 15 million Americans will suffer by 2050 if we do not come up with therapies. Gestational diabetes. And just recently, a non-opiate painkiller developed in Massachusetts with NIH basic research funds that will provide outlets for acute pain that do not expose people to this most addictive chemical that has caused so much pain. Now, my Republican colleagues might say, yeah, that's Massachusetts. That's the whole point, don't you see? It's this blue state and those universities and hospitals that think they're so much better than everybody else, and that's exactly the point. Here's my challenge to my Republican colleagues. Go back to your districts. Talk to your universities. Talk to your hospitals. See how they're feeling about this policy. What you are going to hear is they can't afford to take these grants. The research and the development and the commercialization that you brag about when you go home, the ribbons that you cut for new companies and for new projects, they all rest upon this research infrastructure that is getting cut. Go talk to these companies. Go talk to these institutions of higher education. Go talk to these hospitals. They don't want to see this policy go into effect. And they want to see you vote for it and explain it back home, not hide behind the NIH. So they're losing. Who's winning? China. There were 2 main themes in the recent JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. One was AI, which, by the way, requires a lot of research infrastructure. The second was how good China has gotten at biotech in the last 5 years. The Chinese biotech enterprise is looking at the United States, cutting our own research infrastructure at a time when they're investing tens of billions of dollars, and they cannot believe their luck. Republicans, wake up, stand up, and support basic science. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes a gentleman from New York, Mr. Langworthy, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to celebrate a man whose journey from Jamestown, New York to the pinnacle of professional football is a testament to perseverance, grit, and the power of believing in yourself. Philadelphia Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni. As a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, I never thought I'd be here on the House floor praising the coach of another NFL team. But some stories transcend football rivalries, and Nick's is one of them. From a young age, Nick was a student of the game. He was immersed in football, brought up by two very loving parents that instilled a tremendous work ethic and value set in him. His father, Fran, was a beloved high school football coach, and his older brothers, Michael and Jay, were standout athletes as well. In the backyard of their home, they weren't just playing football, they were shaping a champion. At Mount Union, Nick Sirianni won 3 national championships, but an injury nearly ended his playing career. But instead of giving up, he pivoted, launching a coaching career that would take him from his alma mater to the NFL. He climbed the ranks with the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Colts, proving himself every step of the way. And 4 years ago, he took over as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles and wasted no time turning them into a real contender. But this season, against all odds, his underdog Eagles did more than just compete, they dominated. In a stunning Super Bowl victory, his team overwhelmed the Kansas City Chiefs, proving that heart, preparation, and relentless determination can overcome even the toughest challenges. But Nick's success isn't just measured in wins. It's measured in the message he sends to every small-town kid in Jamestown, New York, the Southern Tier, and across small-town America. No dream is too big. No setback is too great. Success is never given. It's earned. It's built on faith in God, family, and an unrelenting will to win. It's forged through late nights, overcoming obstacles, in moments of doubts that are met with unwavering determination. It's about proving that talent, when paired with hard work, can take you anywhere. Nick, your hometown stands a little taller today. You've shown us what's possible when resilience meets opportunity. And while hoisting the Lombardi Trophy is an unforgettable triumph, I know this: your greatest chapters lie ahead for you. Congratulations to Coach Nick Sirianni. You've reached the top of the mountain. You're a Super Bowl champion. Chautauqua County celebrates you. America honors you. And I know there's even more yet to come. Fly, Eagles, fly, and go Bills. And I yield back, Madam Speaker.
The chair now recognizes the woman from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur, for 5 minutes.
Unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ukraine is the scrimmage line for liberty on the continent of Europe today. We all have witnessed hundreds of thousands of innocent people, war deaths at record levels in this 11-year cruel war that Russia has perpetrated against the free nation of Ukraine. Russia had no provocation. Ukraine for 30 years had tried to build her land forward. This morning, importantly, in Europe, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth made an opening statement, along with many of our allied nations, seeking an end to the horrific 11-year killing field that is Ukraine, after war criminal Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion, as I've said, in 2014, 11 long years of war. Ukraine's President, Volodymyr Zelensky, has stated a negotiated peace will require an exchange of territory. Working with our closest and most valued allies in NATO and the free world, the United States must do everything possible to bring full liberty to Ukraine and move Russia back into her own borders. The international community must safeguard those borders, and those negotiations are yet to come. But we have some hope this morning, if we are serious about making sure the dividing line between the free world and the suppressed world is clearly drawn and safeguarded. This morning I also, Madam Speaker, rise on behalf of the people of Northwest Ohio. We face an economic reality that many across our country are experiencing. Prices are on the rise. Trade wars cause more inflation. Uncertainty and the short supply of goods and services rise as inflation rises. Prices are up 3% across the board. They just announced that this morning, more than expected over the past month of this new administration. Too many families are overwhelmed with the cost of living, and every day people are having to face really hard choices between paying for groceries or rent, between medicine or a tank of gas. Do you just fill it halfway? And the latest curse, rising property taxes. Eggs cost in Ohio between $6.66 a dozen and $8 a dozen. Gas is back over $3 a gallon. Unemployment is ticking up. Property taxes are skyrocketing, and working people are being squeezed from all sides. They don't have a lot of time to think about politics. President Biden was able, with Democrats here in the House, to allow a few prescription drug prices to be lowered. But it's no secret, the majority of families struggle to pay for medicine when they need it. Meanwhile, major pharmacy chains like Rite Aid are shutting down their doors, leaving entire communities with no pharmacy. Why are there no hearings on that here in Congress? Where are people supposed to go to fill their prescriptions? People aren't just feeling economic pressure, they're being crushed by it. Rents keep rising. This forces families and seniors to downsize or leave communities they've called home for decades. Consumer credit card fraud is on the rise, bilking people who are already stretched thin. When families have no room left in their budgets, far too many gamble on their futures, making desperate choices just to get by. My district is no stranger to lottery tickets, scratch-offs, casinos. The wheels just turn faster, people taking chances, and in the last election, that's exactly what they did. They gambled. Many didn't vote. They voted not because they support radical extremism, but because they want to get ahead, and they want this Congress and the new president to help them do that. I hear them. We all should. But the reality is that prices are going up. The Consumer Price Index just rose over the past month with 3% unexpected inflation. Prices are up for eggs, as I've said, 53%. Look at what's happening with the price of higher education, unaffordable now to the majority. If our young people can't afford to go to school and learn,
time has expired.
What does that imply for the future of this country? I yield back. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mann, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, January 29th is typically a day of celebration in Kansas. From Manhattan to Goodland, Topeka to Liberal, Kansas City to Dodge City, Kansans come together to celebrate the rich history of Kansas and to celebrate the anniversary of our statehood. January 29, 2025 changed the meaning of this day for Kansans forever. The entire world stood in disbelief as we watched a tragedy unfold in the crash of American Airlines Flight 5342 out of Wichita and a U.S. Army helicopter. The world lost 67 bright, innocent souls that day, and I speak for all Kansans when I say that this is a day that we will never forget. When we celebrate our statehood in years to come, we will also feel the nudging of the somber emotions aroused by last month's accident. We will remember our fellow Kansan whose lives were tragically lost, farmers, parents, professors, college students with bright futures taken from us far too soon. Audrey and I continue to grieve, and we are praying for the victims and their families. We express our deepest gratitude to the efforts of local, state, and federal law enforcement officers and first responders. It is our prayer that God would continue to provide comfort to their families, communities, and loved ones. There will be a lot to uncover in the days ahead, but for now, we join Wichita, our beloved Kansas, and the nation in mourning the lives lost. Psalms 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." God is near us. Kansas is the heartbeat of the country, and as our state motto reminds us, we will persevere together through this difficult time. Mr. Speaker, I rise in honor of an American patriot, a selfless neighbor, and a great friend, Laura Francis. Since 2018, Laura has served as the chair of the Kansas Republican Party's Big First District. Over the last 6 years, Laura oversaw the helm of a historic chapter of Kansas GOP's first congressional district. Laura led our district in a historic election of delegates to secure President Trump's nomination. She rigorously defended our nation's motto from being erased from law enforcement vehicles, fought to protect our children and their parents' ability to choose an education that is right for them, and grew our conservative base in ways that will reverberate through Kansas politics for many years to come. Somewhere in the middle of her historic term, she fell in love with her husband, Drew. On the same day as their first date, they attended an event that I hosted in my district in Garden City. They shared a phone call with President Trump that day, and the rest of their love story is history. Laura and Drew married nearly 2 years later. Laura is a fierce and loyal leader, but an even brighter neighbor, law enforcement community member, friend, mom, wife, and follower of Jesus. Kansas is the pilot light of the country, and I can attest that the pilot light burns stronger and brighter because of Laura. Laura, thank you for your commitment and dedication to our congressional district, state, and nation. It is so deeply appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kiblin.
Would you pray with me? Holy and most wise God, we seek your wisdom. Wisdom to meet the challenges of this day. Wisdom to discern what is the direction you would have us go. Wisdom to determine what is the truth you wish us both to hear and speak. How does a person become as wise as this? The first step, you have said, is to trust and honor you, O Lord. And so we take our first step today, before any legislative matters are brought forth, before our committees are convened, and in advance of any votes brought to the floor, to show our reverence for you, O Lord. May we also trust that you will equip us, you will guide us, and you will speak to us with the sufficiency of your wisdom for the living of this day. Believing in you and leaning on the strength of your name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Everyone, including our guests in the gallery, please join in.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the failed Biden-Harris administration, federal agencies were allowed to drastically expand power, undermining the legislative authority of Congress. Currently, the process for Congress to pass resolutions on agency policy it disapproves slows the ability of Congress to block destructive regulations, destroying jobs. This week, House Republicans will vote on the Midnight Rules Relief Act, led by Congressman Andy Biggs. The bill allows Congress to disapprove multiple policies through one resolution when those rules were issued during the last year of a presidential term. Ultimately, the bill will provide Congress with the necessary tools to reject regulations protecting democracy and creating jobs. In conclusion, God bless our troops as the global war on terrorism continues. Open borders for dictators puts all Americans at risk of more 9/11 attacks, as warned by the FBI. Trump will reinstitute existing laws to protect American families through peace through strength. Thank you, legitimate President Zelensky Saakashvili of Georgia, to protest the rigged presidential election in Georgia. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Nevada seek recognition?
I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, please.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Let me tell you what the CFPB has done to protect working families for years. Capping bank overdraft fees and credit card late fees, suing big banks, taking advantage of families, saving Americans over $20 billion from abusive corporations. But now, Elon Musk and Doge want to kill it because it's better for billionaires and big corporations and not for you. Let me be clear. This does nothing to make your life more affordable. Quite the opposite. In fact, none of what the Trump administration has done so far is making life more affordable for working Nevadans. So if you're concerned about these attacks on working families and attacks on our Constitution itself, I implore you to call your nearest Republican. Let's face it, they control Congress, and it's up to them to stand up and help us stop this unconstitutional power grab and deliver on their promise to make life more affordable for you. Thank you, and I yield.
Members are reminded to address their comments to the chair. For purpose, the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to celebrate the release of Pennsylvania school teacher Mark Fogel from Russian custody. For more than 3.5 years, Mark, a dedicated teacher, loving husband, and an American citizen, was unjustly detained in a Russian penal colony. His punishment of 14 years of hard labor was an excessive and politically motivated sentence. Despite years of bipartisan pleading with the Biden administration to bring Mark home, or at the very least designate him as wrongfully detained, there was no progress. Enter Donald J. Trump. In just 22 days, President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and a team of advisors successfully negotiated Mark's release. Mr. Speaker, Mark Fogel is now back on American soil and reunited with his family. Promises made, promises kept. Thank you to all those involved in bringing Mark home, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. For what purposes? The gentleman from California seek recognition. Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, immediately after taking office, the current president granted sweeping pardons and commutations to over 1,500 insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021. At least 174 police officers were injured while protecting the Capitol that day, and 5 officers who responded later died. One of the people the president deemed fit to be released from prison shot a gun directly into the neck of an officer, causing him to suffer a heart attack and sustain traumatic brain injury. Another attacked officers with bear spray. After being released for these crimes, he is now at large for allegedly soliciting a minor in 2016. I was one of the last members who was evacuated from this building on January 6th. I have vivid memories, as many of us do, of the Capitol police officers battered and exhausted, but still defending us. The decision to grant clemency to many violent and dangerous individuals is an affront to our democracy, our justice system, and the brave police officers who have defended us that day and every day. Mr. Speaker, I ask members and Americans to reflect on this decision. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. There being no further members seeking recognition pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess subject to call of the chair.